David here. Probably just stream a few minutes. I'm at the Novi Suburban Collection Place Convention Center at the Great Designs in Steel Conference celebrating 20 years. Steel is an extremely important business, especially Michigan, Make America Great Again, reviving manufacturing. So this is more a conference than a convention. They have a small demonstration show place with some of the bigger names in steel, but it's more a conference with educational sessions, and I'm not even sure I'm going to attend any of them. I have a pretty busy day. Acromidal, one of the bigger steel companies, they would have the name slipping me, the holographic goggles, probably displaying some of their site. International suppliers of steel, and as I said, it's mostly educational. They have a few, some of the major companies, so it's a lot of the major players in steel. I saw a few people had shirts on, God forbid say, make steel sexy again. Steel's not that particularly exciting, although it's definitely one of the more important, the Iron Age, leading to the industrialization of man and our current ability to live in houses and have products in automobiles and all the various sorts. So steel, even maybe more important than oil. Right up there with one of the single most important advances in mankind up till today. A lot of steel has been outsourced to China and Korea. Michigan used to be a steel hub. Obviously Ford and the River Rouge original plant mined and refined steels. People are familiar with Diego Rivera. James asking about Ralph. It's just repetitive, like the same arguments again and again, same people repeating themselves. So I made my point, I spoke to some of the people. So I don't like to repeat myself or hear the same things over and over again. So I'm more an engineer consciousness. I'll do debates, JQ stuff, but I don't like the repetitiveness. So here you got some of the major steel companies, some minor ones. Like these conventions, you could rent a table for sometimes hundreds or a few $1,000s. So usually the bigger global companies will have a few tables, sometimes local places, or smaller retailers of specific devices will even come to rent a table. Obviously, historically, car bodies were made of steel. Now with CAFE standards trying to reduce global emissions gas, that I'm not. Thanks, Hillary. I'm not trying to I'm an engineer. This is my bread and butter. Not that interesting. Steel is one of the most important things, in humankind, but it's limited to a field of engineers. Unless you're an engineer, it's just going to be uninteresting to people. There's really no way to make it interesting. They can tell you it's the basis of the automobile or devices, construction, bridges, but your average person just isn't going to find that much interest in it. So here you can see old car bodies. As I said, most car bodies are switching to aluminum. The foam show, actually putting a lot of foam. The foam show will be here in another few months. So historically, steel is very powerful and heavy. So car bodies originally were made out of steel. Michigan was a big steel state. One of the reasons why Michigan was an automobile center was because of the natural resources here, including steel. I mean, iron and steel is an alloy. The science of there's no element steel. Steel is the alloy of iron and different components. And clean steel, strength of steel, Yeah, obviously, like they're building the new Gordie Howe Bridge here in Metro Detroit. Will be majority steel. Skyscrapers, buildings are all majority steel. Not necessarily like electronic components, devices. It could be even like modern day refrigerators, washing machines may or may not have steel in them anymore. And even your average house may or may not have steel. Like, for construction, usually if it's a commercial building, up to like 4 or 5 floors, may not have steel. Some houses will have like a little bit of steel support structure, or in concrete you have your iron rebar. So steel is all over. It's the basis of infrastructure. You would say that even in our concrete, and that goes back to the Romans. Iron supported concrete already existed in Roman, possibly pre-Roman times, with the advent of the Iron Age. And one of the first uses of iron was concrete reinforcement, and that's why some of the Roman structures are still around till today. Steel, I forget the exact history. Maybe only goes back to like 100 years to 200 years. The specific alloys that they mixed to find a large amount of strength in combination of adding a few other elements. I forget the percentages. I think steel is in the 90% irons. Maybe some of it could be as low as 70% in the various, if it's adding carbon or sometimes different elements that they add, and it's found to be sometimes significantly more powerful than original iron was. And so obviously today, so here you have zinc, aluminum, and magnesium. So 3% magnesium, 6% aluminum, and all of these different companies will have their various alloys and mixtures, industrial processes. So I wanted to cover this. It's important for the future of Michigan. The additive manufacturing was much more big. There was at Cobo Hall, Huntington Place today and tomorrow. I streamed there yesterday. That's much more accessible. You can have 3D printer now for as cheap as $400 on your desktop. And in terms of like jobs, employment, it's much more interesting. But the steel will remain the bulwark, the backbone of American industry. So you could see some of the keynotes. So here they have 3 different tracks of classes, and they have presidents, vice presidents of major corporations. So in the morning was they had the president and CEO of the Center for Automotive Research. One of the reasons why this is here in Michigan is because steel is still probably more used for construction than the automobile. As I mentioned, the automobiles are moving away from steel because it weighs more and will cost more fuel. But steel is still heavily used in the automobile, and it's much more safe in terms of like crashes and structure than like aluminum and various things. So the head of the automotive research group was one of the keynotes. Nucor, I think a German company, a lot of Germans here, engineering. You can see the demographics, steel, even globally, even in China and Korea, a lot of these companies have German partners. So you have some professors talking about the properties, failure behavior, joint. You have Nissan here, computer logistics, validation. So these days almost everything also has computer. So Nissan, Honda, actually a lot of Japanese companies. I don't actually see General Motors, Ford. So interesting that it's more Japanese, laser welding. Obviously, an important part of steel is the welding process. Actually, in construction, welding is one of the um, higher paid fields that you don't need a strong education. If you get into the union, you could make even $100,000 a year to save a living, upper middle class living as a welder. But steel is welded and use laser. Also dyes for manufacturing processes. Steel is still one of the hardest, most stable compounds that we have. So die casts are usually still made out of steel. So here you see a whole bunch of things about laser welding and die casting, jointing techniques, formability. So yeah, pretty good conference actually. This one was free, so maybe so it's sponsored, and people probably travel here from all over the world. People in corporations that are dealing with steel will come to learn the trade, to hear from some of the experts, changing trends. Like I've been mentioning on Week in Review, there's a tendency, like Duvid is a student of the science of expertise. So there's a tendency for experts to gather and share information, best practices. And if it's in a game field like chess or something like that, where the best chess players are just likely to meet and want to play each other, prove who's the best, versus a technical field where people have dedicated decades of their life to understanding a specific topic, are going to end up meeting with the people like the Royal Society of London, Paris, the historical scientific Royal Societies, where mathematics, where people of the greatest minds would gather together for the pure research and advancing of the science, and then would have to dedicate a little bit of that time towards the public good. And something like that historically, would be like navigation, astronomy, infrastructure, and that would have included steel. So, like Euler and famous mathematicians, famous early scientists that were part of the Royal Society would have had to dedicate a little bit of their mental effort and to researching topics for the public good, and that would include things like maintenance of the infrastructure. So like here in Michigan, America in general, like God forbid they had that condo collapse, the infrastructure is really, really bad. And it's not really private. Most of the infrastructure here in Michigan is public, and it's funded through the tax dollars, and the system leads to corruption. So our infrastructure crumbles. No one really cares. Very few people understand. So, say like steel, one of the single most important things to the infrastructure of America. And you can see just a small conference, a handful of engineers. And, then the business world, God forbid, just another guy standing next to his machine planning to make a sale. Because people just need to feed their families, and they're working for a corporation or a company. So, most of the people at these conferences are, just praying to make a sale. And so if they're in the beginning of their career, okay, this is fun. You get like a paid vacation. So if you're working for a bigger company, and they pay you to go to this conference, and you get to learn and travel and meet new people and learn a bunch of things, and it could be on the payroll. So like a lot of the younger staff at conferences like this, that's one of the fun elements of the employee coming to conferences like this. And as you move up, you're like a parallel to historically what would have been the Royal Society, but in the capitalistic network, there's no Royal Society. There's universities and think tanks. Some of these conferences will include professors, research at university, but the industrial experts in the field. So actually I was surprised I didn't see too many university. A lot of times you do have heads of university departments So I'm not sure if there's like that much groundbreaking research in steel. So it's probably just the major companies that are testing these things and might not have even like DARPA, Department of Defense, Department of Energy. It's unclear that they would invest that much in steel research. And so just that general ramble of why the decline of American infrastructure, the decline of American industry. Yeah, it's like being a teacher. There's no incentive to go into the steel business. So, you might historically, your family ancestors might have been miners or worked for the automotive industry. And when you're looking for employment, you end up a welder. And so being a welder is a very good profession. And like maybe your father was a welder, and you went to university and become a material engineer. My grandfather was a material engineer, and worked for Caterpillar, and so that's somewhat common, I guess. So a lot of the people here, might come from lines of engineers or blue collar workers that went to university and became engineers and decided to go into material sciences. Then ended up specifically steel, and then on the other end there's actually the mining, and so it's like precious metals, coal, like the Koch brothers or something like that, where you'll have these big conglomerates of mining facilities, and it's actually pretty interesting. But I said it's a niche field. It's not necessarily talked about much. Even cars these days, steel is like the bad guy. God forbid, like coal and like the Koch brothers or something like that. Steel is like a bad guy because it's not. I'm not saying any of these people are bad guys, but saying because it's people are worried about the environment and emissions, and steel is an industrial mining process that could have bad effects on the environment and the automotive industry in general, and so they're trying to get rid of steel, so because it makes things less lightweight. And so one of the key things of the automotive industry is removing steel from automobiles. But historically steel was like a godsend. That's what allowed people to have safe automobiles that would be crash resistant with strong structures or materials. But now everyone wants one, and the processes and depletion, mining, geopolitical circumstances. Like I said, most steel globally these days comes from China and South Korea. So you have geopolitical concerns, possibly like President Trump. John Wolf talking about the infrastructure bill. I'm on my cell phone, so it's hard to read these chats. But we talk about this more week in review. So I'm probably about to get out of here. I picked up some reading material. Like trying to create, the Royal Society. Like we're not going to have a king or something like that. The university system is kind of corrupted in terms of the pure sciences. The corporation is under a capitalistic model, but trying to create some sort of Royal Society of sciences, a return to return to great minds coming together to analyze science. So I wanted to come down here, grab some reading material, just to support the Steel Show, and so people who follow my channel, people who have more scientifically inclined minds or publicly inclined minds to think about the problems facing society. Steel is one of the more important things, as the global infrastructure, and infrastructure is one of the bigger problems facing society. And like the politics of President Biden, the infrastructure bill, they'll probably not help steel, because steel is, tends to be Republicans, right-leaning, and the current political systems like kickbacks and hookups, and there's not really anyone, on the Democratic side right now that they want to hook up in the steel industry. So they might need to buy steel for the infrastructure, but it's kind of the disconnect and the falling apart of American society. So it's kind of negative. There's some other conference here, so I'm about to go. I signed up next week for the plastic mold injection, and that'll probably be more packed. And I think steel's more niche. It's more, large corporations. It's not really like a mom and pop steel shop that, steel is conducive to extremely large corporations, although, many industries might use steel parts. Even the making of steel parts is conducive to not like 3D metal printing that you might have metals, but you can't really 3D print steel. The process of additive manufacturing, so you have to go to older molding processes, sandblasting, and it requires extremely high heats of thousands of degrees, and various things. So steel is not the common thing that you would break into the industry into steel. As where plastic mold injection, you could do your own plastic mold injection. You could even in like your garage or something, you could create molds and heat up plastic just a few hundred degrees, even sometimes even less, and make toy parts or plastics, and that wouldn't be applicable for steel. So that should be a big conference next week. The plastic mold injection. There's also a government fleet that does automobile fleets, and the week after is the Automate conference, and then like another month or so is the foam show. So here's the city, some automotive. So I'm gonna see if they let me into this also, and so God bless. If this is interesting, let me in. Maybe I'll do a quick stream here too. So God bless. Have a great day. And I'm going to write an article on additive manufacturing. I've done some research.